Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the recap show of the High Roller Organization Sports Betting Podcast. We're back here once again, coming off another successful weekend for Coach and T.
Yeah.
We keep getting her done that way, and it has been very profitable for us. And we'll break that down a little later in this podcast. But right now, I want to say congratulations once again. You know, when you're making money and going to the window and cashing tickets, there's no better feeling.
Right.
And it was another fun weekend of college football. First football game that we want to get to and recap was that Miami Texas A&M game. I had a lean on it. I liked A&M. I liked A&M to bounce back. That ended up being a winner for us, and it was really because it was at A&M. They were coming off that loss. They were a little surly. Good teams coming off losses tend to play a lot better. They're a lot more hungry. They have a lot more motivation. And that's one of the things that I always talk about when teams compete against one another. There are really four pillars. And one of those pillars is really your motivation in the game, how hard you're going to play. And I just thought that would lead Texas A&M to a victory. T, what are your thoughts on that game?
So this one, I did not have a play on this game. I made this game A&M right around 1.5, 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't bet this. How the game played out, Miami dominated them. Miami was the better football team. I mean, they put up almost 400 yards of total offense to A&M's 264. Put up 175 yards on the ground against Texas A&M. They outdid them in first downs 27-16.
Mm-hmm.
Time of possession at 9 more minutes of time of possession. All in all, I mean, Miami was a better football team.
Yeah.
They just beat themselves.
Yeah. Good teams find ways to win, and hungry teams really find those ways to win.
Yeah.
And that's just been my experience over the years when I was coaching.
I mean, Miami, they had 2 missed field goals, turnover on downs, and fumbled a punt return, which gave Texas A&M a short field. And I found a stat which is mind-boggling to me. Texas A&M has fewer red zone trips offensively than Iowa.
Yeah, and I have a slight. Even though Texas A&M won that game and beat a good Miami team, I have a slight downgrade for them as I was looking at them. You can't live on that motivation alone. You know that rah-rah speech coming before the game or coming out of halftime only gets you juiced up for so long, and you can't live on it. You can go that well as a coach. You can go that well maybe 2 or 3 times in a year, maybe at most, before your team just kind of tunes that stuff out. You really have to pull forth with the execution, that athleticism, and that skill level. Those 3 things are always more important than that motivation. But every once in a while, you'll find that motivation really plays a big key in those 4 pillars, and I just thought it was in this game. So our next game is BYU at Oregon. Right here, this is where I took one on the chin. I really like that BYU team. I've got them ranked pretty high. And they took it right on the chin. I mean, they were completely outplayed by Oregon. And, that lean was a loss. And that one hurt. Didn't hurt as much for me as it did for the boys in the locker room at BYU, but give Oregon credit. They came out. I may have overreacted to their loss to my top 3 team in Georgia, and I give them Oregon all the credit for bouncing back. So, what were your thoughts on that game, T?
So with this one, this was a perfect example for me of that there's more to handicapping than just a power ranking. Because I actually liked BYU on the number, but didn't get to the window on this game for a couple reasons. The big one being coming off the emotional win the week before against Baylor. Yep. They were in a perfect spot for a letdown game. Oregon, this was their first real chance to prove something after that week 1 loss to Georgia because they had a cupcake in week 2.
Yeah.
So Oregon was out to prove something that they do belong. So for me, I didn't get to the window on this one, even though I did numbers-wise like BYU. Bo Nix had a great game.
Well.
Scored 5 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah.
Oregon, they held BYU to 61 rushing yards in this one.
Impressive.
yeah, well, all in all, they played a really good football game, and we'll see how the adjustments go and what they can do in the Pac-12 this year.
With that being said, we'll move into that just about anybody in our next game. We're going to be recapping the USC Fresno game. On this game, I think we both really liked USC. I really did, and until USC proves me wrong, I'm going to ride that Trojan horse. D, what'd you have as a breakdown on this game? Because this was a play for you,
yeah,
and it was
this was
another
a play
W.
for me. Yep. Just didn't want to step. I'm not going to step in front of this Trojan offense right now until somebody proves that they can stop them. They're just, for me, this USC offense, they're clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Game opened 12, closed 12. I made this game about 17 and a half.
Yeah, you really liked it.
Yes, I got to the window for sure on this one. We got there early. I mean, once again, USC's defense forced turnovers. And whether it was Jake Haener, who hopefully he heals up good and can do something. I mean, it was a pretty bad injury for him. And Fresno lost they lost their captain defensively. They lost the quarterback. I mean, they had a bunch of injuries. But to be completely honest, it wouldn't have really mattered. When Haener went down, they were still down 11.
Yeah.
USC really only beat themselves in a way. I mean, the only thing that stopped the USC offense and their drives were penalties.
Yep.
Really like holds and different stuff like that.
Got behind the chains a couple times and they couldn't overcome
that. And I thought this was Caleb Williams' worst game that he's played so far this year. He still was 25 of 37 for 284 and 2 touchdowns. I just didn't think it was quite as sharp as he'd shown earlier. Missed a couple throws, missed a couple reads, but I mean they won 45-17. Got me to the window for nice cash, and you move on.
I like USC. They're becoming more and more one of my favorite teams, especially to bet this year.
They're so efficient. I mean, it's tough to bet against them because they're so efficient offensively.
And look at betting in that first half. They just seem unstoppable in first halves, especially in first quarters. So if you have that opportunity, that's where some pros can really help you out getting to windows quicker because they're a team, first half team. They're good. No other way to put it. They're good, and they'll make you money. And like I said, at some point in time, the books are going to catch up. So I just think you got to take advantage of where you see value, and I really see value.
And I think the USC. First half overs could potentially be a play too, because USC does give up some yards defensively.
Yes. Oh yeah.
They definitely have given up yards.
Yeah.
They've just been forcing turnovers, whether that be in the red zone like they did all night against Stanford, or wherever. But they keep scoring.
I agree. They keep putting points on the board, and you gotta give them credit for that. So congratulations to UT and to the USC Trojans, and we're gonna hope that keeps on going for us because that really helps the pocketbook. Moving on, we're on to Georgia at South Carolina. This South Carolina team, this is a team that I had ranked pretty high. I liked their personnel. I'm a fan of Spencer Rattler. I shouldn't say a fan, but I liked his game. I believed in him coming out of high school. I thought at Oklahoma, I mean, he was good. He wasn't great. And when you got a Caleb Williams on your team, sometimes you can be a great player, but there's just somebody special that's ahead of you. I thought that was the case. I thought a new change of scenery would help Mr. Rattler. And, we're finding out that, well, so far he hasn't been where I personally placed him, and I've downgraded South Carolina accordingly. We didn't have any play in this game, but for me, what this game did is it kind of elevated Georgia. Georgia is one of my predictions of 3 undefeated teams getting to championship weekend, and they did nothing to dissuade me from believing that moving forward. They dismantled South Carolina. There's just no other way to put it.
Yeah, from the opening kickoff.
Yeah.
For me, I made this game 27.5, so this was no play.
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett, once again, looked really good.
Yeah. Give that young man credit.
Yeah, he's having a heck of a year so far, building off that momentum from the national championship game.
Yeah.
You mentioned the adjustments with Georgia. This is the first week Georgia's now officially my number one team in the country, according to my power rankings.
Okay.
They have overtaken, and it's not necessarily anything that Alabama has done. It's just been how good Georgia's looked.
Yeah.
And I think in perception of everything, if this game were to be played, I think Georgia, on a neutral site, would probably be favored. Okay. So that's some of the reasons why I made those changes. In this one, Georgia they did whatever they wanted offensively.
Yeah.
I mean, 200 plus yards rushing, 550 total yards. I mean, 30 first downs. I mean, South Carolina, they moved the ball a little bit. Had over 300 yards themselves, but a couple turnovers, and you get beat by 48-7. Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah. Nothing more to say. Georgia, you're good. Just that simple.
Yeah.
Moving right along, our next game was LSU at Mississippi State.
Mississippi State was at LSU.
Our Mississippi State was at LSU. Sorry about that. I got a typo here. With that, we didn't have a play on the game, but what this really did for me in LSU with that, 15-point victory over Mississippi State, I've got to say this. I have downgraded Brian Kelly in the first year with all the new players they brought in there at LSU. He's got talent. I felt they had talent. I thought it'd take them a little longer to get everything together. And I thought the rest of the SEC, just the toughness in that first year with Brian Kelly coaching in the SEC, I didn't think he'd get there quite yet. I got to give him credit, though. This is a good win over a solid Mississippi State team. And LSU will see a slight upgrade for me. I'm not going to downgrade Mississippi State much here. I didn't have them as a great team, just a very good, solid SEC team. With that, T, what are your thoughts on the game?
So I made this game 4.5. Yeah. Game opened -3. It was no play really because I needed to see the effort level from LSU again.
Yep.
Not against a lower level team. I wanted to see him against an SEC opponent.
Yep.
All in all, they had a nice showing. I mean, the game was closer. I want to say LSU scored a later touchdown in this one to kind of extend that a little bit. But all in all, I thought LSU looked good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I think Mississippi State and LSU are kind of middle of the road SEC teams at best.
Yeah.
And this LSU, one of the reasons why that number was probably a little lower was, you're playing at Tiger Stadium at night. I think it was a 6 p.m. local kickoff, if I remember right. So, yeah, not a lot to say. LSU, they're a solid football team. Yeah. They've got the talent to play with people. Now they just got to actually go out and do it.
Yep. So. No, I agree. Our next game is Michigan State was at Washington. We had no play on the game. I was kind of conflicted. I really like Michigan State and what they do as far as their power football. And I really thought they would make it more of a game than what it was. And the reason why I didn't go with them, well, A, they were on the road, but B, Penix has been in the Big Ten. He's not scared of Michigan State. And this Washington team is really good, and they looked really good. They beat a good Michigan State team soundly. And what this did for me, although we didn't have a play on it, is I made an adjustment. I've upgraded Washington just a little bit more. And truth be told, I didn't downgrade Michigan State much. So what are your thoughts on this?
So this was another game, and I talked about this, I believe, in the preview video, where how there's more to the handicapping than just purely the numbers.
Yep.
I think Michigan State, I had them slightly favored actually in this game. The reason I didn't bet it is Michigan State's secondary was a weakness. No. And with Washington and how Washington was going to attack Michigan State, they were really going to test that secondary.
And they did.
And, Penix threw for 400 yards.
Yeah, darn close. Did he get?
397.
Okay, yep, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't get to the window pretty much purely based on that. And we even I know I was commented to somebody who mentioned that I think Michigan State's secondary wasn't all that bad or something like that. Well. And it was, with who they were playing, it wasn't special. And then when you take that step up in competition, and Washington and their offensive scheme really shined a light on the secondary of Michigan State, and that's why the score was what it was. Now, it ended up being a little bit closer towards the end of the game, with Washington winning 39-28. But, I mean, you give up 400 yards to the air. You give up 400 yards.
Yeah,
and when you add that with how Washington did trying to slow Michigan State down on the ground. I mean, I even thought Thorne, this was probably his best game. Best game of the year. Throwing for over 300 yards, a couple touchdowns himself. But, yeah, Washington is definitely going to be a player in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And whenever you have a ranked opponent getting points versus an unranked team, you should always take a second look.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, and obviously the books know what they're doing.
Yeah.
This is just one of those instances where I think Michigan State was number 11 in the country, if I remember right, at an unranked Washington team getting over a field goal. They're asking you to take Michigan State. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and say why. And in this world,
didn't want to take a bite out of this game.
A no play is always better
than losing money.
Yeah. So
amen to that.
So yeah.
Amen to that.
If a ranked team is getting points, something's probably up.
Yeah. Moving on, our next game on the HRO Sports Betting Podcast, we've got Oklahoma at Nebraska. This was a no play for T. I leaned Oklahoma. I just didn't believe that, firing your coach after the game, and I'll think the same way with Arizona State coming up this next week.
At least they let Frost get off the field. I mean, Herm Edwards was let go before he left the field.
Poor Herm. That's brutal. By the way, Arizona State and you unknown president and AD, that ain't the way to handle a coach.
I mean, come on.
I mean, have some class.
Especially somebody
have some class. Show, at least give somebody the dignity to handle that behind closed doors the way it should be. It'll get leaked out to the press soon enough. That just downgrades the whole Arizona athletic department in my eyes. That is, how could you want to be a coach knowing that you'd be showing up like that? That really burns. That just really burns at me. Moving back to Oklahoma, they're good. I know they're good. I personally, this is one where I can give a I told you so to T. Nebraska is just not good. This is Nebraska being Nebraska. Remember in baseball, there was Manny being Manny. Nebraska is going to be Nebraska. And that's all there is to it. And the next big time they think they got a big game, I'm going to bet against Nebraska again because Nebraska is going to be Nebraska. What are your thoughts on that game?
So this was an interesting one because where the game opened and just from talking, I mean, this was about as good a spot for Nebraska, in my opinion, as you're going to find. You had a rivalry. They were at home. They had the new coach that you got to play hard for because you're trying to earn minutes or snaps. They came out, scored first, and you're like, ooh, Nebraska's going to play them tough again like they did last year. And then they got the doors blown right off them. Ended up losing 49-14. If I'm Nebraska, I'm calling Lance Leopold down at Kansas.
I tell you, that boy can coach. I don't care what anybody says. That boy can coach. And if you're Kansas, send some of that basketball money Lance's way because he can coach.
He knows what he's doing. I mean, and we saw firsthand what he did.
Oh, yeah. On a more local level in Wisconsin. And he's just good. And people are finding out about it. Next.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to Oklahoma, I mean, they showed. I've been very impressed with what I've seen from them defensively, just system-wise, just playing tougher.
Yeah.
And then when you combine that with the prolific offense that they continue to have, with then that, like I said, that defensive system with the new defensive-minded head coach, but not getting rid of the Lincoln Riley kind of offense, so to speak, and putting up points. I think this Oklahoma team is definitely up there and is the favorite, I think, in the Big 12, contender to potentially make a college football playoff. Dylan Gabriel he looked good. I mean, and he even had a nice run that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see out of him. I think he had like a 60-yard touchdown or something like that. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. I had, going into the year, I had Nebraska as very slight, but they as the best team in the Big Ten West. I liked their talent. It was a dumpster fire. As soon as the bad play call, it was the onside kick, I think.
The onside kick.
When you're up 2 scores, I mean, I hate to say that one play has a huge effect on their season, but you just tell, I mean, the morale just left them.
They haven't been the same since.
And then they weren't good in week 2.
Yeah.
Then you lose in week 3. And then you come here against Oklahoma and just get destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your head coach being let go 2 weeks before it would have saved the athletic department $7.5 million. They were just in a hurry to get rid of him just so Nebraska can come out here and keep losing. I mean, all in all, I think the program is not in a great spot. I had him overrated, and you move on and you learn.
Yeah, you got to learn. Best part about it for UT, you haven't lost a lot of money on Nebraska.
Yeah, in fact, I think the only bet off the top of my head that we've had on Nebraska was taking Northwestern plus the points.
Yeah.
I know you had that one.
Yeah.
And then do you have Oklahoma in this one?
Yeah,
I know you leaned it. I didn't have a play here.
Yeah, we made a little money on Oklahoma, that's for sure. But moving on now to Penn State at Auburn. This was another game. I mean, I got to really give Penn State and the Nittany Lions. I know I took a little heat from you saying that Penn State was better than Michigan in the preseason.
We'll see.
I had them ranked higher. And Penn State, I'll be very honest, Michigan has played better. Michigan is a better team right now than Penn State, but they're going to get to prove that one on the field. I mean, and Penn State going to Auburn and doing to Auburn what they did, I was very impressed with that. Initially when we talked about this game on the podcast last week, you had a line, and I'll let you talk about that right now. Mm-hmm. For me, it was a no play. For you, you had a little addendum to yours, so why don't you talk about it?
I made this game 7.5, and I talked about this in our preview, that at the time of recording, it was sitting at 3.
Yeah.
And I said that I hadn't bet it yet. If it got to 2.5, I was definitely going to bet it, and I may even still have bet it at 3. Well, that line moved to 2.5.
Yep.
When it moved to 2.5, we got money down on it.
Yeah.
We had Penn State minus 2.5 going down to Auburn. Ended up being a winner. Auburn couldn't stop Penn State from running the football.
Yep.
In fact, it just 245 yards. They averaged over 6 yards per carry, had 5 touchdowns. I mean, in terms of overall stats and yards, the game was relatively close, actually. But we'll see now. Penn State, I want to say they've got a couple easier games. I know they played Northwestern in one of them before they got to go to Michigan in the Big House, where you mentioned that. And looking forward to that one. So we'll see what this Penn State team is really all about. Definitely been an upgrade. As far as Auburn goes, I mean, this was like their worst non-conference home loss in 40 plus years or something like that.
Yeah. With that, we had one last play, and it's our continued. It's like our rinse and repeat play of the year.
They can't score. I mean, and they're still good defensively.
They're very good defensively.
I mean, but yeah, so in the week 2 recap video, we gave it out. Iowa under. When it opened, it was 41.5. We jumped that number. I forget. We ended up talking about it in one of the preview videos as well.
Yeah.
Might have even been the Penn State one.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that got cut or if that made it in the video or not. We had Iowa under 41.5. It was almost a push.
Yeah.
It should have been a push. Had the coaches not been worried about becoming bowl eligible, it would have been a push.
Yeah.
I mean, that game, they'd come out of the tunnel, play 2 plays, and go back in for a 45-minute lightning delay. It was the craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the game ended. We cashed a ticket.
Ticket score. So that's all that needs to be said. And oh, by the way, if Iowa, to me, and I think we've talked about this, that magic number for Iowa for us is 35 for the average team. So if we get a better number than 35, we'll be betting that Iowa number again under.
And
Iowa under.
Disclaimer,
No.
Iowa opened 35.5 at Rutgers this week, and
Oh.
I've already got a ticket. I've already bet it.
There you go. There you go.
I'm gonna keep until Iowa proves that they can score, because their defense is still good, and I think
very good.
I mean, at best, I'm looking at 17-13 maybe in this one. Like I don't see it getting above 30.
But that's getting ahead of ourselves. The recap on it, we cashed that ticket. T, why don't you break it down for us? The plays on the video.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
And I'm not gonna get into any of the other plays that we've made in any of the weeks that haven't been on camera days in advance.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys are cashing tickets along with us. In those plays so far this year, coming off of a 3-0 week, we're 9-2 with 12-2 with the units.
Yep.
So what that means is, for like $100 better, I mean, you're up $980. $1,000 better, you're up just under 10 grand.
Yeah.
That's the type of run that we've been on.
Yeah. And that's documented.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
you
all.
Go back.
We're not going to make any
challenge
videos
you, go,
private.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go back and look at those videos. Those videos aren't private. They are on YouTube. Go back and look at it. I mean, my leans are a little different. Actual plays that we give out. Actual plays that T tells you we're going to the window. We buy the ticket at the window. We turn around. We cash that ticket at the window. That's where you're at. That's where we're at. And I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, for us, you're looking at through 3 weeks, we're 20-4 in football altogether with all the other plays. I mean, which is.
But once again, and before we got into this business and we were allowed to hop on the podcast by the HRO organization, I always looked at people going, "Oh, we're 50-1," and there's no documentation.
Yeah.
So for me, the proof is what we say when I'm looking at you in the camera or T's looking at you in this camera. We say we're going to the window with it. That's a play for us. Now, lean's a little different. A lean is how I feel it's going to go, but we may or may not get to the window on those leans. With that, the documented plays to be up almost 10 grand. Who wouldn't want that? So
after 3 weeks of football, I mean, shoot, we'll take that.
Yeah, we'll take that every day.
I mean, in this week that we just recapped, wasn't my favorite slate ever.
Yeah,
I didn't really love this slate, but to walk out of here 3-0, all 3 of the plays documented on camera, that's a win for me. So I'm gonna take that and
we'll take that and
move on to week 4.
All right. Well, with that, thank you for watching the HRO Sports Betting Podcast with us. And want to tell you folks out there that if you've got any questions for us or you got any comments, just leave those messages underneath in our videos, and we'll try and get back to you. We'll go from there. But
keep
thank
cashing
you.
tickets.
Yeah, keep cashing tickets, and we'll see you at the window. Take care.